You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
I feel like you always open us. I'm like trying to be like more active in the opening. And I'm like, I got nothing. My brain is completely mush after spending all day researching this topic.
Well, I feel like our countdown always reminds me of iCarly for those who are familiar. And they're actually doing a reboot now where they're adults.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Sam's not in it, so that's Sam Erasure. I don't know how they're going to write off her character.
I heard that she felt like a third wheel. Oh, no. Not Sam. It was the third wheel from Hannah Montana, who didn't get along with Miley. I forget the character's name.
What, Emily Osment?
Is that who it was? The girl?
Lily
the
from
friend?
Hannah Montana?
Yes. Okay, sorry. I was getting my women sidekicks mixed up.
A third wheel with who?
The guy? The guy character. Oh. I
thought
remember.
They were friends in the beginning. No, Jeanette McCurdy has had... I think it's because she felt like she definitely was. I mean, creepy things went on all those Dan Schneider shows. We can't get into that here, but I understand why she wouldn't want to come back to it. Totally support her. If that's a rabbit hole you want to go down into, if you grew up watching those shows on Nickelodeon, check it out. I was definitely too old to be watching iCarly, but I still did.
Right.
From the record, if our listeners want to know, I am a Sam and Freddie stan, not a Carly and Freddie stan.
Okay, I'm with you on that. I'm with you.
Made my life when they were together. And I was in college, so.
To be fair, I would have to say that by the time like iCarly and stuff came on, I was less into the Disney Channel stuff. Although I will have to say,
Nickelodeon.
Oh, sorry.
Uncultured swine.
I'm so sorry. I was thinking about Hannah Montana again.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite like older Nickelodeon show was Zoe 101. I was obsessed with Zoe 101.
Okay, but when Chase texted her and the phone fell in the fountain, worst ending ever. And then they didn't really end the show well either. I think that's another one where they've talked about doing a reboot.
I know, but there's just like weird stuff with Jamie Lynn Spears, you know? I mean, I feel bad for the Spears in general.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Any child star I feel bad for.
Yes.
They lost a big chunk of their life. I actually spent a lot of my childhood wanting to be like a child star. And I'm so glad now that I'm an adult and I know like how horribly their parents treated them, or most parents treated their child stars. I'm like really grateful that my parents put the kibosh on that one.
Yeah. Otherwise you could have been the next big thing. Well, shout out to Tia and Tamara Mowry because they, had a relatively good experience, but they said that their parents were really involved in everything that they did.
Okay.
And their brother, Taj.
Right,
Anyways,
right.
Check out our next podcast about 90s and early 2000s kid stars. This podcast is Two Girls, One Crossword. I'm Grace Topinka.
And I'm Chelsea Rowan. This is your favorite weekly Podword Crosscast. Thanks for joining us for another week in paradise.
We talk about Podwords. We talk about Crosscast. We talk about iCarly. And now, should we talk about Polapalooza?
We should talk about Polapalooza. Hit us with your hard-hitting question from this week.
We asked, who is the greatest of the so-called great apes?
The greatest, okay? Get that in your mind.
I was just Googling, like, fictional gorillas. Okay. We have King Kong. Shout out to a previous episode.
Classic.
We have Donkey Kong. We have Turk from Tarzan, voiced by Rosie O'Donnell.
Of course.
Happy Pride Month. And we have Mighty Joe Young, which I feel like that one didn't get a lot of votes. I loved that movie when I was younger.
I forgot about that movie until I saw it as an option in the poll, to be completely honest with you. And I think I was afraid while I watched that movie, and that's why I kind of blocked it out of my memory. Because I was like sad for him. I don't really remember the movie, but I remember being really sad about something.
I meant to look up the ending of that movie because, if you don't know, the movie's about a gigantic gorilla, like abnormally large gorilla.
The huge gorilla, okay.
Ferris wheel. I don't know what the whole plot is, but I feel like at the end they just release him back into the wild because he's like in captivity. But I'm like, I don't think that that's good for the ecosystem.
Right. Well, we should talk to the
gigantic gorilla,
the researchers. See what they're saying. Anyway,
maybe that's not the end. Maybe they kill him. I don't know.
Oh, I feel like it was a children's movie. I don't think they would have killed him. I feel like if
Anything
they did like
can
a
happen.
PG, oh, that's true. I mean, it could be like one of those like we have to learn that all things die and kind of lessons for like preteens. Anyway, do we usually say what we would choose first, or do you tell us the answers? What do our audience choose?
I do the ranking. So in first place with 40% of the vote, we have Donkey Kong.
Yes,
Classic.
the
Lots of Mario
ultimate
fans
king.
out there.
The ultimate king.
Second place was a tie, both with 27%. We have King Kong and Turk from Tarzan.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And last place at 6%, we have Mighty Joe Young. I voted for
Joe.
Mighty Joe Young.
Oh, I voted for Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong was a huge part of my childhood. I played so much Donkey Kong on Super Nintendo and, what's the other one? Just Nintendo.
Game Boy. I played on my Game Boy.
I now played on my Switch. I love playing Donkey Kong so much. One of the things I love to ask Matt to do with me is to play Donkey Kong, but he never played when he was a kid, so he's really bad at it. And so I'm always like stealing the remote from him, being like, oh my God, just like let me beat this part because I can do it. I did also play a lot of Mario, but Mario's World, you know what I mean? Like with Yoshi and shit.
Goombas. Sounds like a fake fan.
Yeah, actually I am. I'm actually really into things, but I don't dive deep enough to be called like it's like that jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. Like I really like things and I know like surface level information to get me through conversations. But if I really dive a little deeper, you'll find the holes. You'll find them.
Yeah. I know very specific pieces of, I don't know that much about Mario, but I do know that Mario and Donkey Kong are related.
Okay.
That's
there
what
we
I'm
go.
good for.
Well, that's surprising. I like Turk. Turk was a good choice. I was thinking about Turk.
I had a Turk stuffed animals. I love Tarzan as a child. I love
Tarzan
as a
too.
kid. My childhood stuffed animal, which I definitely don't still sleep with, is a monkey named Tarzan. So, and I know that Tarzan is a human, but whatever, it's a cute name.
It's a cute name
for a monkey.
I love that. Yeah. If we ever open that conservation site in Rwanda, we can name all the gorillas we find, like Tarzan, Turk, Donkey Kong.
Do you remember George of the Jungle?
George of the jungle, watch out for that tree. Ah!
I feel like George was Tarzan.
I think it was. We can't get into this.
We've already gone on enough tangents for today. Shall we go
what's our next tangent?
Heights and shites?
Ah, that's right. Shall I start us off?
Start us off.
Okay, I can't stop talking about gorillas or apes. I just want to do like a quick shout out to the Friday, May 28th New Yorker by Patrick Berry. 5 down. Subjects of interest for Jane Goodall, Diane Fossey, and Birute Galdicus. Sorry, I definitely didn't look up how to pronounce that name before I read this clue. And the answer was apes. So those are the subjects for all 3 of those people. We talked about Diane Fossey on episode 91, Doggies in the Mist. If you're interested in learning more about white people going to different places and being really fucking stupid, listen.
Yeah. To put it lightly.
Just like a gentle.
Well, can I piggyback off of that? Because I noticed there were a lot of clues this week that were like topics that we had talked about. I saw one, I didn't write it down, but it was like alien listening organization. It was SETI, and I knew
SETI
that.
showed up. I saw that.
But then in the Sunday, May 30th, Washington Post by Evan Bernholz, there was 59 down, chess team, e.g., ? And chess was in quotes, and it's cast from Chess the Musical, which we talked about in our chess episode. And then this is like a really old one, the New Yorker by Patrick Berry, June 2nd, 2021. 33 across, word trademarked by Lucasfilms in 2008, and that was Droid. And we did also talk about that in a Droid episode many, many moons ago. I believe it's called These Aren't the Blanks You're Looking For.
And the blank is whatever topic I did that week.
Yes.
I can't remember.
Correct.
Yeah, I love seeing our topics in the puzzles. The more you listen to us, the more you'll see some of the topics that we talk about appearing in your crosswords. I'd recommend listening to us and doing crosswords. That's my pitch for you this week, listeners.
Groundbreaking.
Thank you so much. Like I said, if you go a little deeper than the surface, you will find the holes in my personality.
You will find nothing.
I've got nothing. I am just, you know the holes in like Swiss cheese? I am the actual hole. I'm not the cheese. I'm just the void, the missing cheese.
That's you. That's why we call her cheese.
It's true. Oh my God. Wow, what a segue. We are the queens of segue. Speaking of segue, I'm going to segue us to another Friday, May 28th puzzle. This is a New York Times by Andrew J. Reese. I liked seeing this show up in the puzzle. 27 across, gay rights pioneer Marsha P. Johnson for one. And the answer is trans icon. To see trans icon show up in the New York Times was really nice.
Yes.
Martha P. Johnson is, in fact, a trans icon. And if you don't know who Martha P. Johnson is, it is not my responsibility to teach you because you have Google at your fingertips, my friends. Definitely look it up. But it was odd to see Martha P. Johnson, the answer, trans icon, sitting atop 40 across, quote, vice principal, question mark. The answer was Dick Cheney. It's just kind of weird to see trans icon sitting on top of Dick Cheney in a crossword puzzle. Just something to consider moving forward. Okay. But I did like some other clues from that puzzle. 62 across, what's not working, question mark. And the answer is free time. That's
I
nice.
enjoyed that one as well.
48 down, job that usually requires a face covering. Topical clue, gotta love it. But the answer was heist, because it was like tricking us. It's nice.
Mm-hmm. From that same puzzle, 28 down, offer you might have less interest in for short, was refi, like refinance.
Nice. It's a good puzzle overall.
Mm-hmm. I also enjoyed the Saturday New York Times by Adam Aronson.
Yes.
Saturday, May 29th. 52 across, rude question following an unsolicited idea. And you are the answer.
Very good.
35 down, source of vibranium in the Marvel Universe, Wakanda.
Love it.
7 down, bunch of hipsters, question mark, man bun.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got.
One across from that puzzle was also good. It actually showed up twice in the same week. It's just such a specific answer to show up twice in the same week, okay? And I know people have written to us before and said that, you know, crossword constructors don't collaborate on these things, and I think you're all freaking lying. You're lying. This is not just like fate, okay? This is not just chance or coincidence.
Well, one was in New York Times and one was in the New Yorker.
True.
But it is strange, but I feel like that happens, and I think someone told us there's a name for that when that happens.
I think it was Rex Parker told us that. Anyway, to get to the actual clue and answer, one across, protection of a protagonist for narrative purposes in slang. And the answer is plot armor, which I actually did not know the answer to this until I did this puzzle, the Saturday puzzle. My boyfriend Matt got the answer right away. And I was like, what is that? And he's like, it's when you just know that the character isn't going to die. Like they're protected by the story. For instance, if you're watching like a soap opera, well, maybe not a soap opera.
No, everyone can die in a soap opera. It means nothing.
Let's think like a romantic comedy. Usually, if like, you know, let's say the main character gets into a bad car accident, it looks like they're going to die, but it's like there's 2 episodes left and you know that they're in the last episode. There's no way they actually died in that episode. That's called plot armor.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he explained it to me as. Or like Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, if you know about that.
I never watched Game of Thrones. Hello.
You were really lucky because it was disastrous. What else do we got?
I liked the Wednesday, June 2nd New York Times by Jesse Goldberg. 22 across. I read it as tear sheet, question mark, but it was really tear sheet, and it was tissue.
Nice, nice.
And then I thought you probably liked 54 across. There's the blank. It was rub. There's the rub. I feel like you like
There's
to
the
say
rub.
that. And then 24 across, dangerous juggling, props, torches. I love juggling, and I miss going to my full moon drum circles where they juggle torches. So,
They do. They
thanks
do.
for reminding me.
Did you do the... Let's see. Oh, don't clear the puzzle here. Come here. Did you do the... Oh, you did. We're talking about the June 2nd puzzle by Jesse Goldberg, right?
Correct.
I'm following. The theme was, you know, a good theme to see in a New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
The 34 across, historic inn commemorated during Pride Month as represented by this puzzle's border answer. And the answer is Stonewall. Stonewall is really important to, you know, LGBTQ rights, plus, all of that stuff. Definitely look it up if you have time. But the theme itself is really cool. I liked it. All around the border of the puzzle were answers that were missing the word stone, because it was creating a wall around the puzzle. It was creating a stone wall around the puzzle to give you an example, one across was graveyard site. And the answer that you actually filled in was head, but it was headstone, as in headstone, part of the wall. Let's see. 5 across was emerald or ruby, and the answer was birth, so birthstone is part of that stone wall that goes all the way around the puzzle. So that was
also
nice.
Shout out to a previous topic again.
Oh yes, there was another one, and we got rings centerpiece, which was 10 across, and the answer was gemstone. Again, we're talking lots about these kinds of past puzzles. All good stuff. What else? Oh. I have something I wanted to bring up with you, and this is a shit. I think it's a shit. And I want your opinion on this, and maybe our listeners can write to us and let us know what they think about this as well. Did you do the Monday, May 31st New York Times by Michael Lieberman?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember what the theme is for that puzzle? I'll tell you.
Yes.
Fashion designer associated with the item spelled out by the starts of 17, 26, and 42 across. The answer was Coco Chanel. And so the beginnings of those answers that they're mentioning in a clue were little, black, and dress. And everybody knows that little black dress is associated with Coco Chanel. Do you know what else is associated with Coco Chanel?
Nazis.
Nazism. She was a literal Nazi spy. Literally. She was banging a Nazi, and she became a Nazi spy. Her code name was Westminster, because she also was banging some guy in England that's last name was Westminster. So how do you feel about seeing Nazis as theme fill in crosswords? Because I think there's something to be said about, letting historical figures be historical figures, of course. She was a person. She did revolutionize fashion, but she was also a Nazi spy. Do we put her in crosswords? I don't know. I don't like seeing her in crosswords. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think people have been talking about this too for a while, that they should. But I do think that Coco is crosswordese. I think it's in Phil a lot, and it's often clued as Coco Chanel. Usually don't see her full name there. I feel like that's easy to not use. Coco the gorilla. Oh no, I think that's KOKO. But just as another possible someone you could clue for.
Cocoa
I
Puffs?
disagree with you. But, you see Eva Perón in there too, and she also has, from Evita, also has Nazi ties.
Ooh,
but she also is a historical figure. A lot of people, I think that is less well known, and same with Coco Chanel. I think a lot of people don't know that.
Right.
As well.
Actually, there's a spokesperson from Chanel that had to, they eventually had to, for a long time, they said it was pure speculation that there were no connections between Coco Chanel and Nazism. But more recently, they've come out and actually had to say, the fashion house Coco Chanel has moved on from the complicated past of the founder. Yes, she did all these amazing things, but there is a history there that we have to acknowledge. But as a fashion house now, we are moving away from that. So, even the fashion house recognizes it.
Yeah. Is Coco Chanel the name of the brand, or is it just Chanel?
I believe her name is actually Gabrielle Chanel or something like that. I'm probably butchering this. I'm sorry. But she goes by Coco Chanel.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd be interested to see what constructors think. But I agree with you that I feel like people have been talking about it in the crossword verse long enough that everyone can just move away from that.
Right. I mean, Coco is a good, collaboration of letters, consonants and vowels. It's real nice. But I'm sure there's other Coco words that we can, come up with, so we don't have to use her, especially not as a full theme in a puzzle. Do you know what I mean? I'm come on. Anyway, that's the first time I've had a real shit in a long time. I've been blocked up.
We have been constipated here. I agree. I don't have as many shits these days.
That's okay though. We're kind of trying to just
maybe I'm just less complainy.
Yeah, but I'm trying not to be complainy.
Yeah, but that is a valid shit, if I may say so myself.
All right, then I'm gonna take it.
She's taking it.
I'm taking it. Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about? I have one more puzzle that I can talk about that I liked.
I have nothing.
She's got nothing. I want to talk about a theme that I really liked. It is from the Sunday, May 30th New York Times by Adam Wagner. The theme was game over. Okay. And this is actually another puzzle, another topic that we've had in the past. The revealer was 47 down, one ending for a classic board game, another of which, when a player resigns, is represented visually 6 times in this puzzle. And so the answer is checkmate. So one ending for a classic board game, and the answer is checkmate. So it's about chess. Grace did an incredible topic about the history of chess. And then another of which, when a player resigns, is represented visually 6 times in this puzzle. So the theme. So if you're resigning in chess, you have to place your king on its side, okay? And so basically there's 6, quote, tipped over kings shaded in the puzzle. So as you're going through the puzzle, they're just across answers, and it would say like Shakespearean king, and the answer is King Lear, so you'd put Lear in, right? Mm-hmm. But the downs that intersect the last letter of the tipped over king are missing the king's name from their actual spelling.
Okay.
So you're kind of like, you've got letters, then you include the king, and then you continue down with the letters. So for example, let's see, King Lear, let's go with that one. Mm-hmm. It intersected 76 down, tinker with, and the answer was fiddle around, but Lear was tipped over. So spelling down would be Fiddround.
Ooh.
And then Lear
like
kind
that.
of like, was like an offshoot from it.
That's a lot going on.
Right. Or one was like King of Skull Island, and the answer was King Kong. Okay. So that intersected with 106 down. Potato cultivator that was developed in Ontario despite its name, and the answer was Yukon Gold. So Yukon Gold. Yeah, that was good. It was a good theme. When Matt and I figured it out, we were like, "Oh, this is fun."
And that's why they call it a Saturday puzzle, ladies and germs.
We have lots of fun here, and that's all I got. That's all I got for this week.
All right. Well, should we flip the coin then?
I guess we should flip the coin. I guess it's my time to shine. I flip this coin every goddamn week. You may open the puzzle, you may open the crossword. No. God, it's been a long day. You may open the podcast every week.
There you go.
But I flip the coin every week.
She does. All reliable over there.
And you can literally never take this from me. All right, I'm going to flip the coin now. It's heads.
That's you.
That's me. I know Grace is very excited about her topic this week, so I apologize for stealing the first reading.
It's okay. I'll just let it build up.
All right, the anticipation.
Positively build.
Until she can't possibly hold it in for another second.
Okay. You go.
All right. My topic actually showed up twice in various puzzles this week. So I'll read you the 2 clues that I saw this topic show up in. Maybe they're in more. We'll see. The reason I decided to do this topic was from the Monday New York Times, May 31st, by Cameron Austin Collins, 34 across. Ach hen Atten's kid. And the answer is King Tut. Mm-hmm. And then from the Sunday, May 30th New York Times by Adam Wagner, 69 across. This was part of that theme, the toppled king theme, King of Ancient Egypt, and the answer was Tut. So it was like, match made in heaven. I had to do King Tut. King Tut or Tut is Phil you see all the time in puzzles. It's crosswordese. And I think it's about time we cover the infamous, the mysterious, the boy king wonder, Mr. Tut.
Let's do it. I actually went to the King Tut exhibit. It traveled all over the world, and I saw it in Miami in high school. It was a school field trip.
That is so funny, because I was going to ask you if you had gone to see that exhibition. It was in 2000, and it was between 2005 and 2011, I believe. Mm-hmm. It came to Philadelphia in 2007, and I also saw it in high school. I was a sophomore, I believe, when I went to see it, or maybe I was a freshman.
Oh my gosh. So we were like in the same room, kind of, like around the same stuff, and we didn't even know.
It's fate. It's fate. if we went back in time, you'll see that I left you like a secret message that
You like
I was like
fogged up the
moved
glass
to Chicago. And so then you were like, you had Chicago in the back of your mind your whole life, and you finally went there for school, and then I suddenly appeared in your life. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Makes sense.
So yeah, we're talking about King Tut today. What do you know about King Tut? Give me like a one-liner or 2 words or something. What do you think of when you think of King Tut?
A boy king.
A boy king. Okay, so like a young king.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get the basics out of the way. So King Tut, as we know him in the West, has a real name, like a legitimate name, and his full name is Tatangammon. Though he was originally, so when he was born, he had the name Tatangammon, which is related to a religious thing, and I'll talk about that later. So King Tut was a pharaoh in ancient Egypt, specifically during the 18th dynasty, which spanned, the whole 18th dynasty spanned approximately 1550 BCE through to 1292 BCE. So it was around for a long time. Tatangammon was born in 1341 and reigned as pharaoh between 1332 and 1323, so 9 years. And in 1323 is when he died. He was 18 or 19 years old when he died. Okay. In terms of family, the most commonly accepted theory among archaeologists, scientists, researchers is that King Tut's father was Akhenaten, as the clue in the New Yorker suggests. Mm-hmm. Akhenaten is also known as Amenhotep IV. Okay? And his mother was his father's direct sister. They don't have a name for this person. They call her the Younger Lady. She was found in one of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. They did a bunch of DNA testing, and King Akhenaten and the Younger Lady had the closest DNA to Mr. Tut, okay? Some people claim that Nefertiti, who was the wife of King Tut's father, is actually Tut's mother, but there's no real way of being able to verify who is or isn't mommy, daddy, son, grandson, etc., because it's not written down anywhere. It's kind of, you have to piece it together through what you read on the different tomb walls and different, writings that survive, and through DNA testing. But DNA testing is hard to be valid. It's hard to verify the truth of the DNA testing because DNA can kind of deteriorate as time goes on. And King Tut is 3,000 plus years old. Okay. So you can imagine the kind of degradation that comes from, that goes into that DNA situation.
Yes.
Anyway, other family bits. King Tut became pharaoh, and then he married his half-sister named Antechamber, and they had 2 daughters, though neither survived infancy. Not much is known about Tutankhamun's life. The biggest detail that we do know is that he was the son of a religious radical, and that is Akhenaten. Excuse me. When Akhenaten became pharaoh, he ended the centuries-old polytheistic religious system in Egypt and replaced it with a monotheistic system where the one god was named Aten, the sun god. So they worshipped this one god, the sun god, instead of a bunch of different gods. Mm-hmm. Akhenaten ordered the names and images of all the other Egyptian deities to either be destroyed or defaced. He also moved Egypt's capital from Thebes to a place called Amarna. And then when he died in 1334, 2 years before Tut took the throne, 2 other pharaohs came in between his death and King Tut ascending the throne. And those 2 pharaohs are Smenkhare and, I really apologize, I'm trying really hard on this name, Nefertiti. And scholars believe that is actually Nefertiti. They believe Nefertiti was the second female pharaoh of the 18th dynasty.
Good for her.
Good for her. Anyway, so after Nefertiti died, Tutankhamun ascended the throne at just 9 years old. Then he married his wife, Antechamber, who was his half-sister. Because he was so young when he took the throne, he was advised by an elderly official named Ai, who had a long history as chief advisor to the royal family. It's believed that Tutankhamun didn't make many choices himself, if any at all, especially not in the early years of his rule. Instead, he leaned heavily on his advisors instead. One thing he did do, however, potentially at the advising of his advisors, was to reverse the religious reforms of his father, revitalizing the polytheistic worship in Egypt.
Back and forth, back and forth.
Back and forth. Okay. So he changed his name from Tut, and so when he was born, like I said, his name was Tut-Ankh-Aten. Aten is the name of the sun god. So he changed it to what we now know it as Tatangammon to reflect his allegiance to the creator god Amun.
Okay.
So that's why he changed his name.
Wow, he was 9 and you're saying the advisor probably told him to do this.
Right, exactly. And he didn't do this, I think, at 9 years old. He probably did it a couple years into his rule, right? He also issued decrees restoring the temples, images, personnel, and privileges of the old gods. He took special care to also restore the shrines of Amun, which had been severely damaged during his father's reign. And then he also moved the capital of Egypt back to Thebes.
Oh, he did a lot.
So we're back home. We're back. We're back in business, baby. Another thing that we are sure of is that Tatankammon was tall but physically frail, possibly deformed, which then leads me to his death. Do you know anything about King Tut's death?
I know nothing, and you know that.
Okay, she knows nothing, and I know that, but I have to ask the questions anyway. I think when we're learning about King Tut, or when we learned about King Tut in school, there was a lot of mystery and intrigue around how did King Tut die? You know, he's a boy king. Why did he die so young? I remember this being hyped up to me as like being a really big deal. And I guess it is a big deal if you're like into history, and I guess I am into history. But I mean, it's not like, you know, that big of a deal, if you know what I'm saying.
That big of a mystery, you mean?
It's not that big of a mystery, especially once I tell you about it. So,
okay.
It's, like I said, it's nearly impossible to know who is whose mommy, daddy, son, daughter, whatever. It's also nearly impossible to know exactly how King Tut died, which is why there's a, quote, mystery about it, because, you know, you can frame it as such, like, we'll never know how King Tut really died. It's like clickbait, right? There's no written records of the event, so researchers can only go off of what they found in his tomb and by doing various DNA testing on his remains. We do know that he died suddenly, as shown by the smallness of his tomb. It's believed that who was his advisor, who eventually became Pharaoh after Tut died, ended up taking the tomb that was supposed to be Tut's, which is much, much bigger. So King Tut died suddenly, and everyone was like, holy shit, we need to get this guy in a tomb right away to get him ready for the afterlife. Oh my God. His tomb's not ready, so let's just throw him in this one. This one is ready. It's very small. It's only 4 chambers, which is pretty big to me, but I guess for a pharaoh is pretty small.
Yeah, it's small for a pharaoh. But yeah, they're probably scrambling. They weren't expecting that.
They weren't expecting it.
Did not have a tomb on deck.
They didn't have anything ready. Nope. And I was probably like, hell yeah, I get the big boy tomb.
He was like, oh, that's a shame. Who's going to take the big tomb then?
He's like, I guess we don't want it to go to waste. I guess I should take it. Although I really couldn't possibly take it. But if I have to. So basically, because of the size of his tomb, we can only know that he died suddenly, okay? And when his tomb was initially discovered, Tut's mummy actually had a large hole in the back of his head. So historians thought he had been assassinated. I mean, hello, small tomb, boy king, older advisor suddenly becomes pharaoh. The pieces are coming together, this intriguing story. Well, okay, no. Basically what happened is during his mummification process, like, they effed up and they broke a skull. They broke his skull. It was like an accident. And we know that because there were tests done in 1995 showing that the hole was made during the, mummification process, and that he had actually died with an infection in his leg. And so they believe that it was the infection in his leg that caused him to suddenly die. You also have to know that King Tut had a club foot. And so he just was physically frail. He had issues. Most of the depictions we have of King Tut, when he's like doing activities that a normal pharaoh would do standing, he's always seated because he had to be in a chair most of his life. Interesting. Anyway, also in 2010, scientists found traces of malaria parasites in his remains and suggest that malaria, combined with a degenerative bone disease likely due to the traditional inbreeding of Egyptian royal families, that may have been the cause of his death. So we've got leg infection, malaria, degenerative bone disease. Like, King Tut was not, he did not have an easy life.
No, I mean, he was doomed from the start.
He was doomed from the start. And, like, this is why inbreeding is not good.
Yes, do not recommend it.
Definitely don't recommend it. The living example of inbreeding is the British royal family. So just take a quick peek there. It's a fact. It's a fact. You got cousins and cousins and cousins over there. Anyway, after his passing, King Tut needed to be prepared for the afterlife, which in ancient Egypt meant mummification. Mummification was an important part of ancient Egyptian death rituals, as they believed that the preservation of the body made it easier for you to live well in the afterlife. Mummification, if you don't know, is the process of removing all moisture from a body, which means the body will not easily decay once it's interred in the ground, or interred anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's talk about Tutankhamun's mummification and burial. First came the embalming. His heart is left intact inside his body, but other vital organs, liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines were removed, preserved, and wrapped in cloths. They were then put into 4 mini coffins made of gold inlaid with carnelian stone and colored glass. His body was then washed, anointed with herbs, adorned with more than 100 amulets, rings, and bangles, then carefully wrapped in strips of linen. This is actually my will. So...
All right, better start saving now. Get a good life insurance policy.
You better believe it. Then his mummy was laid into a coffin of solid gold. Before the lid of the coffin was placed on, a 22-pound portrait mask was placed over his head. The portrait mask is probably the most famous artifact found in his tomb. It's burnished with gold, has a pointed nose, smooth cheeks, and the eyes are outlined with lapis lazuli. Then the gold coffin was closed. And it was placed into a larger coffin of gilded wood, then was housed into yet another larger coffin of gilded wood. And then these nested coffins were lowered into a sarcophagus made of yellow quartzite. The sides were etched with hieroglyphics. Each corner featured carvings of protective goddesses like Isis, Nephthys, Selket, and Neith. And then the sarcophagus was nested into 4 ornately decorated chests known as shrines, each bigger than the last. The outermost shrine was made of gilded cedar and was 16.5 feet long and 9 feet tall.
I was going to say, it's like a Russian doll situation.
Exactly. The original nested dolls. Okay, King Tut. It's insane to me. Like I said, this is my will. I will only live or rest easy knowing that I'm in a 16.5 foot long and 9 foot tall gilded cedar shrine.
That's fair.
I mean, can I ask? I'm not asking for much, really.
You're not.
After this incredible life I'm living. So yeah, then his remains were carried all the way to his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. The valley is on the west bank of the Nile, opposite of Thebes, which is now called Luxor. From the 16th to 11th centuries BCE, tombs were excavated for pharaohs and other powerful Egyptian nobles. The valley is known to contain 63 tombs, ranging in size. One is like a simple pit, and then there's another with 120 complex rooms and like corridors and stairs and all that stuff. It's crazy. And in 1979, the Valley of Kings became a World Heritage Site. Remarkably and understandably.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Tut gets interred in the Valley of Kings, but not only were his remains entombed in the Valley of Kings, but also all sorts of mementos from his life. Disassembled chariots, a childhood gaming board, furniture, clothes, lamps, sculptures, weapons, jewelry, and even 130 walking sticks, which corroborates the assumption that King Tut had, like, physical deformities, that he needed canes to walk because of his leg.
Mm-hmm.
His tomb and antechambers were packed to the ceiling with more than 5,000 artifacts. Sadly, once sealed, his tomb was mostly forgotten. That is until the 20th century. Dun, dun, dun.
I was going to say, when did they,
when they
dig
find
this
him?
up? Open all the boxes.
They opened all the boxes. Well, they discovered his tomb on November 4th, 1922. In the Valley of Kings, the man who discovered the tomb was English archaeologist Howard Carter. Howard Carter first arrived in Egypt in 1891 when he was 18 years old. He began his career by using his artistic abilities to copy wall scenes and inscriptions, and 8 years later, he was appointed the Inspector General of Monuments in Upper Egypt. This is at a time when the United Kingdom still occupied Egypt, so just keep that in mind. He resigned from this job 8 years later and began working for a man named George Edward Stanhope Molyneux Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnavan. Mm-hmm. Lord Carnavan was into archaeology as a hobby, and he wanted to use Carter to have more success on his digs in Egypt. At this time, it was thought that all ancient Egyptian tombs had been discovered, but Carter was certain the tomb of Tatangammon was still to be found. Okay, he believed that he could find this tomb. By 1917, by 1917, Carter and Carnavan were in the Valley of Kings, where Carter discovered several pieces that confirmed his belief that Tut's tomb was still to be found. One of those was a cache of funerary items that all bore the name Tatangammon. So he was like, he's here somewhere. I know he is. I just have to find him. Mm-hmm. They'd continued excavating in the Valley of King for 5 years, but had no luck. Lord Carnavan was like, we're done. I can't give you any more money to keep doing this. But Carter was like, no, please, 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 let me do it one more time. I promise you I will find him. So, on November 1st, 1922, Carter began his final season working in the Valley of Kings. He had workers, they were working at the base of Ramses the Sixth tomb, and they found a bunch of ancient workmen's huts there. And so what he did, Carter had his workers expose the ancient workmen's hut, and when he was pulling them away, they revealed a step had been cut into the rock. Carter was like, wait, what is that? So by November 5th, 12 stairs leading down had been discovered and a blocked entrance to a sealed tomb. Here's a quote from Carter's dig diary. Quote, "The design was certainly of 18th dynasty. Could it be the tomb of a noble buried here by royal consent? Was it a royal cache, a hiding place to which a mummy and its equipment had been removed for safety? Or was it actually the tomb of the king for whom I had spent so many years in search?" End quote.
Wait, hold on. That's from his diary? I would have been like, "Dear diary, OMG, maybe I might have found King Tut. We'll write back later."
BRB, gotta keep digging. No, he seems very eloquent, you know.
Ugh,
remember, this is 1922. After he spent, 12 hours in the hot sun digging around in sand, he goes back to his tent, and he's literally got nothing but a pen and paper. So, this is his entertainment, is writing in a diary. I mean, he's got a lot of time on his hands, so I guess. I don't know, man. I don't know. Anyway, so once the door was fully exposed, Carter was able to see seals at the bottom bearing Tutankhamun's name. So, on November 25th, the door was removed. There were signs of at least 2 robberies inside the tomb, and they believe it was from ancient times. So one robbery they believe happened before the door was sealed, and another they believe happened after the door was sealed, or they actually dug into the tomb from above. But because the hole was so small, they couldn't leave with anything huge. They could only take small things. So they probably took jewelry and things like that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so because there was evidence of robberies, Carter and his crew were really worried that there would be nothing left inside. But if there was something left inside, it would be a discovery that would change the world. Carter wrote, quote, "With trembling hands, I made a tiny breach in the upper left-hand corner. Darkness and blank space, as far as an iron testing rod could reach, showed that whatever lay beyond was empty and not filled like the passage we had just cleared. Candle tests were applied as a precaution against possible foul gases, and then, widening the hole a little, I inserted the candle and peered in. Lord Carnavan, Lady Evelyn, and Chandler were standing anxiously beside me to hear the verdict. At first, I could see nothing. The hot air escaping from the chamber caused the candle flame to flicker, but presently, as my eyes grew accustomed to the light, details of the room within emerged slowly from the mist. Strange animals, statues, and gold. Everywhere the glint of gold. For a moment, an eternity it must have seemed to the others standing by, I was struck dumb with amazement, and when Lord Carnavan, unable to stand the suspense any longer, inquired anxiously, 'Can you see anything?' It was all I could do to get out the words, 'Yes, wonderful things.'" End quote.
Wow, he's really got away with words. I really felt like I was there with him.
Right? Oh my God, I could just see it in a movie, right?
The hot air causing the candle to flicker.
Right?
I love it.
Foul gases that could possibly kill me. Yeah, I was there with him. So, inside the tomb were 4 rooms: the antechamber, the annex, the burial chamber, and the treasury. Inside the antechamber, it was stuffed, packed with everything that you could possibly imagine a pharaoh would have in his tomb. There's just boxes of things, chairs, couches, a tangle of parts from several dismantled chariots. Most everything in the room was made out of gold. On the right wall stood 2 life-size statues of King Tut, facing each other as if to protect the sealed entrance between them. Okay. Before they could move into the burial chamber, the annex and the antechamber needed to be emptied and cleared in order to preserve and protect the contents. So as soon as these items were documented and removed, they were greeted by hundreds of tourists and reporters who were waiting for them outside. One of the ways that Lord Carnavan was able to like fund this is because he sold like rights to the Times in London to like take the first photos of what they found inside King Tut's tomb. So people knew about this. Like they were sending dispatches home to the newspapers. Like it was on the radio. There were tourists in Egypt at the time. They would just crowd around waiting for anything to be brought out of the tomb. It was like a huge like paparazzi mass just waiting for information to come out of the tomb, which is kind of interesting to think about. So yeah, after conservation and documentation, the items were packed into crates and sent to Cairo by rail. So next, they had to enter the burial chamber. Inside the burial chamber, it was almost completely filled with a large shrine. So that big nested box we talked about, that was basically the only thing inside the burial chamber. But they did find a number of items on the ground around the shrine, including portions of broken necklaces, which is probably there because robbers dropped them. And then there were magic oars to, quote, ferry the king's boat across the waters to the netherworld, end quote. Carter and his team worked to disassemble the shrine, and they found the endless layers of nesting beneath. Finally, they reached the coffin, and inside they found King Tut. And the reason this was so important is this was the first ever royal Egyptian mummy ever found untouched since his burial. Like, no one had ever been inside. 3,000 years. And they were like, hello, we're coming in. And King Tut's like, I'm trying to get to the netherworld. Hello. I feel bad because like then all his stuff was like carted away, and it's like, well, you're ruining his death ritual burial afterlife shit. Hello. Anyway, so that's the burial chamber. The next room was the treasury, and it was right on the right wall in the burial chamber, and it was filled with items including boxes, model boats. The most notable item in the room was a gilded shrine, and that is what held Tut's embalmed organs. So those organs that were removed, they were inside that shrine. They also discovered the treasury where 2 small coffins were found in a simple undecorated wooden box, and inside these 2 coffins were the mummies of 2 premature fetuses, and people believe that it was King Tut's 2 unborn or deceased babies that he had with his half-sister wife.
That would make the most sense.
It would make the most sense.
Who are they?
Right, exactly. Anyway, so it took Carter and his team 10 years to excavate, catalog, document, and preserve everything inside the tomb. And most of the contents are now housed at the Cairo Museum. There was a hugely popular exhibition of the Tut tomb stuff in the 70s in the United States, and it created this insane Tut mania. Like people were walking around like, stop looking at my Tuts t-shirts, you know? People were obsessed with King Tut. Actually, the exhibition we saw was the second time I believe the stuff had left Egypt, and we did not actually get to see. They had a replica of his face mask. It wasn't the real thing. So if you saw that, I hate to break it to you, but that never left Egypt. So you didn't get to see that.
What's it all been for?
I know. One of the things that was really cool that they found in his tomb is they found this dagger, and it was made out of a meteorite.
Ooh.
Right?
That's fancy.
And that was actually at the exhibition that we went to. So not that I remember seeing it, but it's cool to think that they found this meteorite knife, and we potentially saw it in 2007, 2008, something like that. So, anyway, that's all I got for King Tut. So,
blast from the past.
Blast from the past.
The ancient past, but also my high school past. I remember they made it seem like the field trip was such a big deal.
Right.
Like,
and
I mean, it is.
Yeah. But
it's a limited time in the United States.
Right, and it's interesting that, it's actually, King Tut stuff is on tour in the United States right now, I believe. Or was the 2020? I can't remember.
Well, hopefully it was in 2020.
I can't remember. If anybody out there saw the King Tut exhibition that came back, I think it might actually be now because like the COVID restrictions are up or something, but I think it's doing like a 17-city tour.
Well, check out your local King Tut tour if you can.
If you can, then you should.
It's my topic, and I see that you shiver with anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
My topic comes from the New York Times June 1st puzzle by Finn Vigiland, and it's 14 across. Let's do the time blank again. Campy 1970s lyric. Warp. Let's do the time warp again. Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, that's why I would have no idea. I have never seen Rocky Horror Picture Show, so the reference went way over my head. But I'm really excited for you because I know how much you love this.
Yes. Anticipation was a call out for any of you who've seen the movie. You would know that. It's a line from the movie. Yes, I thought the Rocky Horror Picture Show would be the perfect topic as our first episode during Pride Month.
Yes.
So, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It is probably the ultimate cult classic film. It has a huge cult following. It's actually the longest continuously running film in the world.
Wow.
And even if you've never seen it, you probably know it as a movie where people go at midnight, they dress up in corsets, they throw stuff at the screen, they scream stuff at the screen. So if you haven't seen it, hopefully you've at least heard of it. It's a huge part of, or it played a huge part in LGBTQ history, especially in the 70s when it came out. So I'm very excited to talk about it.
I'm excited to learn.
Yes. So I got most of my information from RockyHorror.com, which is the official Rocky Horror website.
Okay.
Also from an article in the BBC.com called The Rocky Horror Picture Show, the film that saved lives by Larushka Ivans the Day. And also from Culture Trip, an article called All You Need to Know About the Rocky Horror Picture Show by Daniel Reckstaffen. Just want to get that out of the way because I kind of jump around, so.
Very nice. I always forget to say where I get my information from, so if anybody's ever curious, I have all of my information saved, so just shoot me a line, and I'm more than willing to share them with you.
She goes to the encyclopedia section of the library.
No, it's called Wikipedia.com. It's the most reliable source.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Before there was the Rocky Horror Picture Show, there was a musical play called The Rocky Horror Show before it became a picture show. And it was written by Richard O'Brien, a.k.a. Riff Raff. I hope that some people listening to this have seen The Rocky Horror Picture Show because I do mention a few things that, you know, if you're fans, you would know. So Riff Raff is a character in the movie, and I didn't realize that's the guy who wrote the play, starred in the play, and in the movie. But basically, this is the plot line, very condensed, of the play and the movie. So the play told the story of a newly engaged, celibate until marriage couple, Brad and Janet, who get caught in a storm while out on a drive. They end up going to the nearby mansion home of Dr. Frankenfurter, who is a transvestite scientist. I know that we don't really use that word that much anymore. Again, this is in the 70s. Talk more about it later. But Dr. Frankenfurter is throwing a party to reveal his new creation, a Frankenstein of sorts. His name is Rocky. He is a Frankenstein-esque, physically perfect man with blonde hair and a tan.
Amazing.
So the musical premiered in London at the Royal Court Theatre in 1973 and ran until 1980. Tim Curry played the role of Dr. Frankenfurter on stage, and he also plays the role in the movie, and you probably know him from everything. He's in
literally
Annie,
everything. Yeah.
Nigel Thornberry. He's Pennywise in the original It. I love him. So yeah, he was in the play, again made into the movie, and the play moved to several locations around London, and it had a successful run in Los Angeles, and it even was on Broadway for 45 showings, which is a short run, but at least it was on Broadway.
It was on.
Yes, and the play was a huge hit, especially among the queer community.
All right.
So this is a quote from theculturetrip.com. Quote, "A satire that drew on vintage horror and science fiction genres, it was right at home in a 1970s Britain that had been undergoing major social change for over a decade. Its liberal use of rock and roll and raising of important gender identity issues resonated well with its audience."
Nice.
So the play was such a huge hit, they were like, we should make this into a movie. And
Clearly.
the film adaptation was released in 1975 with a lot of the stage actors reprising their roles on the screen. So if you watch the movie, basically everyone, like all of Frankenfurter's friends, everyone except Brad and Janet basically, are from the original play.
Okay.
However, the movie was initially a huge flop. It did not have a wide release. It was quickly shelved, and it was hated by critics. But Roger Ebert made an astute observation in his review. He says, quote, "The Rocky Horror Picture Show would be more fun, I suspect, if it weren't a picture show. It belongs on a stage with the performers and the audience joining in a collective send-up."
Oh.
And
Did Roger knew?
He knew. He was right. The movie
Did Roger
needed
knew?
audience interaction.
Yes.
So, in 1976, Tim Deegan, who was a young ad exec at 20th Century Fox, who owned the movie, he persuaded the folks at Waverly Theater in New York to replace the current midnight shows with Rocky Horror. So the Waverly was already had like a popular midnight showing thing going on. They would play movies like El Topo and The Night of the Living Dead. Denise Borden was the manager at the Waverly, and she saw Rocky Horror Picture Show, and she was so fascinated by it that she said, yes, we can play this at midnight, and she started her own like personal hype campaign for the movie. She put up posters. The answering machine at the theater like mentioned you had to see Rocky Horror Picture Show at midnight. This film cannot be missed. Exactly what she said. And then before the showing, Denise would play the soundtrack from the movie to warm up the audience. So everyone would be like waiting for the movie to start. They'd be playing music. Everyone would be singing along. They'd get excited. And so then once the movie started playing, the audience members were, very lively. They started to act up. They would boo the villains. They would cheer on the heroes. So that's kind of the beginning of the audience participation of it all. And regulars started to come every weekend. They would be reserving like the same seats every time. I mean, it was a place for people of the queer community to like come together and meet other like-minded people. It was like the thing to do every weekend. One of these regulars was Louis Farese, who was a kindergarten teacher from Staten Island. And Louis is the first person to be credited with yelling lines at the movie. So if you've never gone to it, basically there are throughout the whole movie, essentially, there are lines that the audience members say back to the lines in the movie. So I'm going to give you an example. I'll do a really bad British accent for the movie lines, and then I'll show like what the audience would say. Okay. "I would like, you would you? If I may, you may, to take you on a strange journey. How strange was it?" That's like the whole entire movie. It's just back and forth with the dialogue. And Louis coined this as counterpoint dialogue.
Nice.
So that's kind of how that started. And then around Halloween time, people started dressing up as costumes of characters in the movie. Bill O'Brien is credited as the first person to dress up as Dr. Frankenfurter. And O'Brien and a few of the other regulars started to lip sync with the soundtrack played before the movie started. So then this became a regular like mini floor show before the movie. Oh. So basically slowly all these little traditions started adding up. It was like first the dialogue, then the dressing up, and then doing like a floor show with the movie. The midnight showing spread all over the country, and eventually it became customary to have actors lip sync with the entire movie right in front of the screen, which they still do today. So if you go, there'll be like a cast of actors who will literally stand right in front of the movie screen, and they will like act the entire movie lip syncing, like not just the songs, the dialogue as well.
I love it.
Amazing.
When are you gonna take me?
Dude, whenever. I'm always down to go. It's just I get tired now at midnight.
I know, that's the only thing.
I know it's tradition. I'll take a big nap before. But people started bringing props as well. For example, water guns to squirt during the rain scene, rice to throw during the wedding scene, toast to throw when Dr. Frankenfurter proposes a toast. In New Orleans, someone dressed as Eddie, who is played by Meatloaf in the movie, fun fact, would drive his motorcycle down the theater aisles during Eddie's song, Hot Patootie, in which he, drives out in a motorcycle and drives around in a motorcycle. I just want to say, a lot of theaters don't do like the rice and toast anymore. They used to also throw hot dogs because of Frankenfurter. But it's too annoying to clean up, so a lot of them don't do that anymore. Sadly.
I don't blame them. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I used to work in a movie theater, and having to clean up just the damn popcorn people leave on the ground, impossible. I can't imagine rice.
Yeah.
Or breadcrumbs. Oh my God.
But the craziest thing about all the counterpoint dialogue and the props that were like spreading to all these different theaters around the country is that like this was before the internet. So somehow all of this was just being communicated through like different communities, word of mouth, etc.
Mm-hmm.
The BBC article talks about how Sal Pirro, a former school teacher, said in the 70s he'd make a quip at a New York screening one weekend, like he would make something up, and then he would fly to LA the next weekend and hear it shouted at the screen there. So things were like spreading quickly.
Wow.
And in these days, you don't have to worry as much because you can actually look up the chant along script online, so
Nice.
you know what to say, so you don't look like a total virgin, is what they call people who've never been to one before. But back then, there was actually an album called Say It, the Rocky Horror Picture Show Audience Participation Album, which was a live recording of a showing on Halloween in 1983 that contained the entire audio of the movie along with all the audience callbacks.
Wow.
So the author of the BBC article talks about how they had this on a cassette and they would listen to it like in repeat in their bedroom so that they could learn all of the chant backs.
That's so funny.
Mm-hmm. And then as far as the audience quip goes, like anything kind of goes. If it lands, then it gets incorporated into the next week's showing. So that's kind of how they got built up over time. And I want to say, yes, some of the responses are rude and no longer PC. For example, some audiences no longer want to call Janet's character a slut, and Dr. Frankenfurter's song, I'm a Sweet Transvestite from Transsexual Transylvania, is also no longer PC, but we have to remember that Rocky Horror is a product of its time.
Mm-hmm.
This is a quote from BBC. Quote, in a time and place where gay rights was just finding a voice in the wake of Stonewall riots, the Waverly attracted a congregation of groovy outcasts, weirdos, and rejects. An audience hungry to celebrate a story of sexual awakening, where gender fluidity and pansexualism are joyfully celebrated, where a straight, white, conventionally attractive young couple called Brad and Janet, both virgins until their wedding night, are considered the freaks, and where a sweet transvestite from Transylvania, dressed in stack heels, suspenders, full makeup, and little else, waltzes off with the movie.
Amazing.
Groundbreaking at the time. Also, to like at this time, a lot of the media, like when it came to queer issues, they were focused on AIDS and other like issues that negatively stigmatized, I guess all stigmas are negative, the LGBTQ plus community. But Rocky Horror was friendly, it was accepting, it was fun, it was silly, it was goofy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like a whole different representation.
Right.
These days, Rocky Horror has become more mainstream. The movie itself is relatively tame. I feel like, yes, there is some sexual stuff, but it's all very campy and silly. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I saw it the first time when I was like on TV in elementary school, but I went to my first midnight showing when I was like in 8th or 9th grade. And I'm pretty sure I went with my friend, and I think her mom and grandma came with us. So
amazing.
It was a family outing.
I completely missed this. I really wish I hadn't.
I learned about it. Okay, so the time warp is played at school dances. That's kind of how I learned about it. My sister went to this drama camp and they learned the sign language version of Time Warp, the song. So then we started listening to the song and then we saw that it was on TV and then we watched it. And then I had a friend in middle school and she was like, have you ever seen this really weird movie? And I was like, yes, I have seen that. And then that's kind of how it all started. Then I think her mom had been to it before, took us to the midnight showing. Good
Amazing.
times had by all. In 2016, Kenny Ortega, who directed High School Musical, directed the Rocky Horror Picture Show Let's Do the Time Warp Again, a 2016 made-for-TV remake starring Laverne Cox and Victoria Justice. This one is way more politically correct, I guess you could say. More current.
Right.
And then in 2019, Disney finalized their takeover 20th Century Fox and now owns Rocky Horror Picture Show. Sad.
Okay.
But this is kind of interesting because Disney has like removed some other cult classics from circulations like Fight Club, but public screenings of Rocky Horror Picture Show are still allowed, and there's also like they still allow homemade merchandise. That community is still thriving. So, I mean, not to pat Disney on the back too much, but that's kind of a good sign.
Let's see how long that holds up.
Yeah. Larry Wiesel, he is the president of the Rocky Horror Picture Show official fan club, was interviewed in the BBC article, and says that despite Disney, Rocky Horror, like the Frankenstein story it's based on, is its own monster, and the fans will keep it alive forever. This was true this past year. Even with COVID shutting down movie theaters, Zoom screenings were being held regularly. Wiesel says, quote, I know of a lot of people whose lives were saved by this movie, especially for those in the LGBT community. It's a place where they could be themselves and find people who are their family. I don't want to give that up. I want people to still have a place to be.
I love it.
Thank you to Rocky Horror Picture Show for that. I'm going to talk about some film trivia about Rocky Horror Picture Show that hopefully will still be interesting if you've never seen the movie. This is from ScreenRant.com.
Let's do it.
The original name of the stage show was going to be They Came from Denton High.
Okay.
But it was changed at the last minute, thankfully. Because it does not have the same ring to it. The two characters that got new castings for the movie were Brad and Janet, which was like the vanilla couple that, you know, gets their eyes opened. But movie producers thought that the characters needed to be American and the stage performers were all British. So Susan Sarandon plays Janet. This was like one of her first big roles, and she decided to do it even though she doesn't like singing, and that character does have to sing a little bit. She decided to do it because she was friends with Tim Curry. So she auditioned and she got it.
Love it.
Barry Bostwick was cast as Brad, and he had previously been playing Danny Zuko in Grease on Broadway. So definitely a different type of character.
Gosh.
But another potential casting for Brad was none other than Steve Martin.
That would be interesting.
Yes, which I was like, that's kind of weird. But then the article was like, yeah, but he was in Little Shop of Horrors after that. So it's not totally out of his repertoire. Sue Blaine is the costume designer, and she originally didn't want to work on something that was so silly with such a little budget, but she basically decided to do it because of Tim Curry.
Gotta love it.
Yes, and obviously the costumes are iconic. I always think I look like Dr. Frankenfurter when he, in that one episode the scene where he's wearing like the lab coat and the gloves. Anytime I wear a dress that like goes down to right above my elbow. But yes, so shout out to Tim Curry because he got a lot of people on this project. Speaking of iconic costumes, the makeup for the movie, which is also iconic, was designed by Pierre Le Rocher, who is one of the creatives behind David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust look.
Oh.
So it all comes together.
It all comes together.
Peter Hinwood, he's the guy who plays Rocky. He had no acting experience. He was just a model with a six-pack. And they dubbed, he barely talks in the movie at all, but they dubbed his entire dialogue in the movie. So he never speaks. The mansion that it was shot at was not a soundstage. It was an actual castle in England, and it's now a hotel, so you can stay there if you want.
How cool would that be?
I know, I would love it. I think, well, now it says like its biggest draw is that it's close to Legoland, so.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. It was freezing and wet throughout filming. They have fixed the heating situation in the hotel, by the way.
Oh, okay.
And there's also very little bathrooms. Susan Sarandon said she got laryngitis while filming. She said it was
no good.
She can look back and laugh at it now, but it was horrible. Also, it was originally supposed to be like The Wizard of Oz, where it was black and white until Dr. Frankenfurter makes his iconic entrance, and then it would turn into color, but they couldn't do it due to budgetary restrictions.
Interesting.
And something else that I forgot to write, but I thought was interesting. There are actual Easter eggs hidden in, like, literal Easter eggs hidden in the movie because the cast did like an Easter egg hunt and I guess didn't pick everything up. So I think there's like 7 or 8 you could see throughout the movie.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yes. So basically, if you have never gone to a midnight showing of Rocky Horror, and you're into like that kind of, it's not for everyone, but if you're into like campy stuff, 70s stuff, cheesy stuff, I highly recommend it, especially if you're a part of the queer community. It's iconic. You need to see it. And I will leave with the final message of the movie, which is, don't dream it, be it.
All right.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, so basically, Grace, you need to take me, since I'm a Rocky virgin. So
I will take you. The music box. They do it there. Who knows when we'll next be able to go to a midnight movie. But I know the midnight movie's the tradition, but this is what I suggest. Start the movie at 11. We're still watching it at midnight. But it's a lot to start a movie at midnight.
No, I agree. I am with you. I really want to go and I want to experience this before I die. But, oh my God, midnight, you're asking for a lot here. I'm sorry I didn't find it sooner, but like, can someone throw me a bone? Like, midnight.
I know. When I was like in 8th grade and I first went, it was totally fine. I went like a couple of years ago and I was, getting kind of sleepy. But I think we should definitely go around Halloween because that's when it's the biggest crowd.
Okay, cool.
That's like the big traditional one. And I'm sorry to our listeners, but I was looking for a picture of me. I know it exists, dressed up, going to my first one, but I couldn't find it. I was like looking through my photo bucket. I looked on my old hard drive and I couldn't find it anywhere. Sadly, I do have a picture of me dressed up as Magenta from a couple of years ago, but that's not as funny. But maybe I will post it on our Instagram. So
we'll see if she
you're
finds it.
For something visual that's not too abysmal, then you can follow us on Instagram at The Good Evening Girls.
Or you can follow us on Twitter at The Good Eve Girls, where Grace gives us her incredible polls. I can't wait to see what she comes up with this next week. We'll see. We'll see.
We shall see.
And if you're not interested in polls or pictures, you can also find us on TikTok at The Good Eve. What are we at on TikTok?
The Good Eve Girls.
The Good Eve Girls, because we post videos there. Fun videos. Come over and like them and watch them.
Please, we're desperate.
We're desperate.
And I guess until next time.
Until next time, whoa, we'll see.
We just did the wave
later.
and you missed it.
Oh, because you can also watch our videos, our podcast is on YouTube. We're the Good Evening Girls on YouTube. Come over, watch us if you want to see us in the flesh. That's where you can do it.
You can see our beautiful eyes.
Our eyes and our smiles.
That's my Sid impression from Ice Age, and I think it's pretty good.
It's very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm Chelsea. You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
And I'm Grace, if you care. Okay, well.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.